So you understand what I mean about childlikeness? How important it is? In Christendom, we have an idea, a concept. It's in the scriptures. It says, perfect love casts out all fear. Why do you think there's so much fear in the world? Now, and so little love. Is there a correlation? I think so. It's also a direct connection to greed. You know, the love of money is the root of many evils, many crimes, and many injustices. And those kind of conditions that it creates causes the love of many to grow cold. Because they're damaged by it. They're abused by it. So when you put it all together, it starts to make sense, doesn't it? Can't help but think about that. And the love of many will grow cold. On a cold night like this, freezing rain. You know, it's treacherous outside. It's dangerous for a lot of folks to be on the road. They can't see the ice, and they keep flying through here. Somebody's gonna bite it pretty bad. But that's just the way it is. Black ice. You can't see the hazard in front of you. Well, that's what pride creates. Pride creates the conditions where you can't see the hazards that are in front of you. Nor can you see the hazards that are right there with you in the present. Now, the more childish somebody becomes, the more prideful they become as well. You have to break that pride. You have to humble them. And if they won't be humbled, they create the conditions that eventually create humiliation, because pride comes before a fall. Pride refuses to accept responsibility for what it's done, doing, or going to do. Pride is not risk-taking. Some people think it's arrogant to take risk. There's good risk and there's bad risk. Then there's recklessness. Pride is reckless. Right? It's arrogant. How do you know the difference? How do you know? If you can't see it in yourself, I doubt you're going to be able to see it in others very well. Now think about that. Know thyself. You can't know thyself as you are without the light of the truth. Happens to be you can't have perfect love that casts out all fear without truth. It happens to be you can't actually be a just individual in the purest sense of the word and merciful without truth and love. Now think about that. So being childlike doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. Doesn't mean you have to get disciplined at some times, to learn. But you do learn. And you're willing to learn. You're also willing to take risk. You're also trusting. Now think about that. You're trusting. Now those that are childish, that are arrogant, prideful, evil, try to take advantage of childlikeness. And that's how the system, how the world corrupts childlikeness, wounds, and tries to create childishness and multiply more of itself. That's being conformed to the image of this world. A corrupted image, a marred image. Like we're made in the image of God. Right? Evil, the darkness wants to mar that image. Right? In you. It wants to kill, steal, and destroy you. And all of that is rooted in pride. Now think about what you see that's happened during the crisis in leadership that wasn't willing to do the right thing. They were in fear, but really what it was pride. They feared their reputations being hurt, that they were incompetent, that they blew it, that they screwed up. And because they remained in that, they created a bigger problem, and many people perished. Many people got sick because of their pride. Okay? And what did they do? Well, they accused and blamed others, of course. That's evil. That's childishness. We sometimes use the terminology when sin is fully grown, right? In the church. Think about that. Fully grown. When it reaches a maturity level, or now put that in terms of people. Put that in terms of pride. When pride reaches its apex, its fullness, it has created the conditions that will cause it to fall. Sin, fully grown, gets harvested. You reap what you sow. You sow what you will reap. The more wealth, power, influence, control you have, the more you're responsible for how you use it. The bigger impact you have, the bigger ripple effect you have on the totality of the whole. And if you're in pride, what you leave in the wake, in the waves that you create, is damage, destruction, injustice, corruption. It has an exponential cascading effect. And that is what you're responsible for. And that is why people that are arrogant, that care more about their pride than learning and taking responsibility for their own actions, right? That is what sets them up for their consequences. And their consequences are exponential because they have a cascade effect. That's how they are dealt with, right? That's why they're fearful. They're fearful, right? If they come clean, they'll have to pay the price for it, right? So they try to cover it up. They try to blame shift. They try to put it on others, displace, transfer, project. But the reality is they're only exponentially amplifying their consequences by being unwilling to humble themselves and take responsibility for their failures. They also can't learn from them because of that. So without consequences being applied, they multiply their failures, they multiply their consequences, and they leave a bigger and bigger wake of destruction behind them. So that's why I talk about leaders will be judged by a different standard. And that standard is based upon their level of influence, right? And how that impacts other folks. So if you're dealing with leadership from a point of view of, for example, government, within the government, look at how that has impacted things in terms of bad leadership and good leadership, right? How that's impacted the entire country, the people, whether at the federal level, the state level, the local level, right? And look at who's blaming who the most for things. Who's unwilling to take responsibility for their own choices and their own actions, and trying to put that over on others. And when others refuse to accept it and call them out on it, right, they point back and they say, see, you're the one doing it, right? They don't like to be called out on their stuff, right? They're still trying to hide their own insufficiencies, incompetencies, arrogance, right? So in a leadership position, whether it's in the military, whether it's in civilian government, whether it's in the business sector, you have to deal with those things, because if you don't, there is a cascade effect that exponentially amplifies and grows and affects greater and greater amounts of people. And it affects people, places, and things. Now think about that. Now think about being a parent, right? Think about your impact on your children. Think about your impact on your neighbors, right? Think about your impact on those you work with, those you play with, right? Work hard, play hard, right? You see now why we say that it's important to love your neighbor as you love yourself? Because if you don't love them, you don't treat them with respect, you don't treat them with love, justly, you're actually ultimately creating the conditions that hurt you worse, even more. Not just in the here and now, but in the forever after. That's why I keep saying, you can't really change the world until you see the world that is inside of you, right? You got to know yourself. You got to be willing to see the good, the beautiful, the ugly, all of it. That's why you need grace. That's why you need the truth. Because it's the truth that sets you free from the fear, the false evidence appearing real, right? Exposes the roots of the problem, pride, confusion, right? It frees you from that so you can learn from it. And it reverses the paradigm. You get greater and greater vision. You start to see more and more and more. And you see yourself and others. And it's humbling. Because, you've done the same thing. You can relate. You can spot it, right? So you're more willing to forgive, right? To give them grace. Grace is not something you demand. It's something you give, right? Freely. Now, there are times to practice tough love and call things out. But think about it. You're going to have to look at things from a point of view. The measure at which you judge others will be measured against you. Look at the left and the right in this country politically. Look at what just happened today, dealing with the President Trump, right? And the impeachment being thrown out, right? And look at, Governor Cuomo and the issues he's having to deal with, right? It's not a coincidence they're both happening at the same time. There's something to learn from that, from both of them. So, you have to learn to take responsibility. It's tough. It's something we have to walk out. We have to learn to do. It's not easy, especially, for those in leadership. There's another reason why we're told to pray for those in leadership. They need it. They're also bigger targets because they have a bigger impact, a bigger ripple effect, a bigger cascade, a bigger a bigger wake that they leave, right? And the waves that they make by their decisions. So when you live in a toxic environment where everybody's blaming one another, and everybody's obsessed with that, you're all diverted from actually anything that will allow any of the problems that created the situation that everybody's upset about from being mitigated. You can't get down, we can't fix it, right? Because it's going to take everybody meeting in the middle and working together, and that takes humility, right? It takes a willingness to set yourself aside, right? And maybe some of the things you want right now, right? It's going to take some compromise to do that, to fix certain things. It's a give and take. But if you don't, you all stand to lose everything. And that's what I mean, right? If we're going to get on with America Next, there's got to be a come to Jesus moment, if you will, where people realize that what we've been doing hasn't worked, is not going to work, it's only going to complicate the situation and make things worse. And that will increase the consequences that everybody has to actually deal with. That amplifies the problems. And it creates new problems. And it creates vulnerabilities upon vulnerabilities upon vulnerabilities. It's a cascade effect, and it's self-amplifying. And it destroys the childlike wonder in everybody and in our society, which you need if you're going to solve problems, which you need if you're going to have a society that everybody wants to actually live in. Right? So think about it from that point of view. Okay? Just you. So do you remember when I talked about where the word sin comes from? You know, the word that no one wants to talk about. Because, well, that's a religious thing, right? Well, it comes from Ur of the Chaldees, from the Babylonians. And sin was the chief of the pantheon of all the gods and goddesses. was considered the moon god. And of course, the moon doesn't have any light of its own. It just reflects back the light, the real thing, from the sun. So think about that. It's a counterfeit. It's a symbol for a counterfeit. That's what pride turns people into. Counterfeits of who and what they really are or could be. What they were meant to be. And what are they counterfeits of? Well, they're counterfeits of those that are not prideful and in a lie. They counterfeit the authentic and genuine and real, and deceive others by doing it. Now think about that. They're fake. So if they're counterfeits of the real, there must be authentic, genuine articles of the real. Now put that in the context of leadership. Because that's what you need to learn when you go through rough times, in a time of crisis, and you see when people are being tested, what is what. The counterfeit will never ever stand up to the real thing over time. Because it's a counterfeit. It's fake. It's dependent on the real thing, though it denies the real thing. Because of pride. So consider that with what you've seen going on in the context of your public and private sector. Consider that in the context of what you deal with every single day, what you see in the media, and what you see in your relationships and in your own life. Do you understand now why I say when you are done with your counterfeits, all right, perhaps you'll be humbled or humiliated enough to seek the real thing. But pride blinds, so you can't see the real thing while you're in pride. And while you're thinking in diversions, in fear, and in confusion, it blinds you to the real thing. And so the consequences scale upwards, and the pain and suffering increases until such time as you're either humiliated or humbled. That's how it works. It's a perfect checks and balance system, and it's built into all of creation. So are you done with the counterfeits? Remember what I said the other night, or a couple of videos ago? That if all your counterfeits were taken away from you, most of this society would cease to be. That's how far you've gone in jettisoning the authentic and the real. Yet down deep, you want it, but you fear it the most because it might expose you. Or they might not want you, might not love you because They might see what you think is the real you, with all your baggage, all your brokenness, all your wounds, all your fears. But see, those are chains. Those are diversions, right? People tell me all the time that I speak too complex, that my ideas and concepts are too complex. Do I sound complex to you? Do I? I can write all kinds of ways, do all kinds of presentations, but when I do these talks, I cut it down to the bottom baseline. I use the common vernacular, and I speak to you just like you're sitting here with me. It's funny, when I put up the videos today and the videos yesterday, why did I do it knowing that most people were diverted watching the impeachment stuff, right? Or some other diversion? Well, I did it because those that actually will take the time to listen might glean something from this. And not everybody wants to be diverted, and not everybody is diverted. And at some point, a lot of the people that were diverted may take the time and listen to this at the perfect timing for them, when they're ready to learn something or ready to hear some answers on some things, and they might glean something from this as well. The outcomes are in God's hands, not mine. Now, how did I learn all these things? Huh? I was willing. I've been willing to learn all my life. I love learning. And I make a lot of mistakes, but I learn from my mistakes. Are you willing to let other people make mistakes and come clean with them and forgive them so that they can learn and you can learn from them as well, so you don't have to make the same ones? Because that's what grace gives you the opportunity to do. Pride does not. Again, the difference between childlikeness, right, and childishness. We all have to deal with it one way or another. You know? So when people generally tell me that something can't be done, like my ideas on how we might be able to fix this country or turn it around, especially with America Next or the T3I project programs, you know what I tell them? Okay, watch. It's going to happen anyway, one way or another. You can either be a part of it now, or you can be a part of it then. But it's going to happen. But you know what I know about people that are doing that? A lot of times, they want to believe it, right? But they don't want to believe it. Like I said, they've been hurt, wounded, they got their hopes up, they don't want to get them up. I get it. That's what a domination system, right, the zeitgeist, beats people into. Cynicism, lack of belief. Then there's others that say some of those things because they don't want them to happen, because they didn't think of it, which is stupid, because a lot of the things they could bring to the table could make it actually happen and make it better, because it's not about me. You see, they're projecting onto me their own selfishness, their own pride. That's how what you broadcast, right, what you signal to other people matters, because it has a ripple effect. When everybody's telling you something can't be done, eventually a lot of people start believing them. They get discouraged. Now imagine all the problems that have been solved throughout history. It wasn't like they didn't have to overcome discouragement. But they also, somewhere along the path, had some encouragers. If you want to do good in society, you don't have a lot of encouragement. If you want to do evil, right, there's a whole lot of encouragement towards that. Because those that are doing evil, that are arrogant, that are cynical, right, that are owned by the zeitgeist, that are slaves to a lie, always become evangelists for that lie. They want more and more people in it because it helps feed their self-delusion, their self-deception, the lie that they're in. It helps feed that because they're being devoured by it. And they become devourers of others because of it. That's why a lot of people are afraid to be childlike now. They're afraid, right? False evidence appearing real, of what others might think. And then others are going, well, if they're not being childlike, I can't be childlike, right? It spreads. It's a ripple effect. Well, if they're not willing to do it, I don't know if I'm willing to do it either. If I'm not going to speak up, they're probably not going to back me up if I did. You know, all those tapes that I can't do. We cannot do that. That things will never change. All the lies, constant lies. We all deal with it. We tell people all the time, you're in America, you can do almost anything you put your mind to. Is that really true? Well, to a degree it is. But there's some things you're just not going to be able to do. Because you're not designed to do it. But your gifts and talents, the things that you really have in you, that everybody's been given, those things, the real desires of your heart that get buried over time in the rubble of life, you can do those things. You're created to do those things. You were meant to do those things. And you still are. Nothing has ever been achieved for good without a battle. You're going to have to battle through that. You're going to have to face your fear. And like I've said before, courage never is possible in the absence of fear. Courage happens in the face of fear. It's the ultimate risk in the right way. You can overcome. But you have to see yourself, and you have to deal with your pride. And you have to see the truth. And rely on the truth and the light of the truth to guide you on that path. You'll be amazed at what you can do, what you're capable of when you're walking in the light of the truth instead of the darkness of your pride. Now think about when you were a kid, and there are all kinds of things you thought you could do. Think about the creativity, the excitement you had. Yeah? Remember that? The freedom you had to explore, right? To look at things. It was all new. Imagine that as an adult in the age that you are now, but far beyond just like what it was when you were a kid. That's what we mean when we talk about being born again, right? Spiritual rebirth, transformation, right? It transforms you. It renews your mind. It really lets the childlikeness and the adult live in harmony together. There's amazing things you can do. There are amazing things we can do as a nation. We have to face the fear in our individual lives and collectively as a nation. We can and will overcome. Think about that. Think about what I'm telling you. What do you got to lose? But everything.